Hello, everyone. Welcome back to My Arc Stories podcast. And today's episode, it was so much fun talking with him because he's an architect who is licensed in the US, but he's currently practicing in both Nepal and in the US. And his studio's name is Studio 2.0. And that's why this podcast, you can break it down into two parts. So, on the first part, we talked about what's the experience of running a firm in Nepal and the contrast between running a firm in Nepal and in the US. Whereas on the second part, we talked about his ARE's experience. And specifically, I would really, really recommend this to all the international students who are thinking like if they really want to study ARE, because he gave some of a very great insight about ARE and what was his experience. I highly recommend you to go through this podcast. If you even don't want to listen to the first part, which is mostly about Nepali architecture and the practice, you can just skip it to the second part, which is ARE, and I will provide the timestamp down in the descriptions below. And now let's enjoy the podcast. Welcome, Razandai. So, how is your visit to Nepal?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. Um, I just landed here for Tihar
Hmm.
and got a chance to enjoy Tihar, and then yeah, I've been enjoying the weather.
Oh yeah, you are basically based in Austin, right?
Yes, yes. Currently, I'm based off of Austin.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can imagine the weather there. It's kind of similar to Dallas.
Yes,
Must be
yes,
very hot. Yeah.
yes, yes. Every time when the summer hits, I kind of miss Nepal
Yeah.
even
Oh
more.
my God. But this time it's getting a little bit colder here in Dallas.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah, and yeah, I like Austin's and even like Texas winter even better. I usually go to Big Bend during winter, and it's amazing
Mhm.
temperature wise and weather wise.
Yeah, I think um, I was there in Iowa for 2 years, and the weather there was very extreme, like extreme cold. And moving here to Dallas, it's extremely hot during summer, but I feel like I still enjoy the rest of the year because summer is it's just like 3 4 months, but then the
Mhm.
rest of the year it's very pleasant. And so yeah, let's talk about your architecture journey. First of all, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure, sure. So hi, I'm Razan Karmacharya. I'm originally from Nepal, but did all my architectural education in US. So I did my Bachelor of Science in Architectural Studies, and then worked for a couple of years, gained some experience, and then did my master's in architecture. And currently, um, I have more than like a decade of experience in architecture. I've mostly done, technical side of architecture, and then slowly moved on to being a project manager as well uh, for Studio 2.0.
Okay, so you are also co-founder of Studio 2.0, which is based in Nepal, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so okay, one interesting thing, why the name is Studio 2.0? I always wanted to ask about it.
So the way it started was we wanted to um, um, you know we wanted to incorporate technology into architecture. So what thought was studio being a studio and architecture studio and being Studio 2.0 would be like the next version of an architecture firm. So that's how it started, and we liked the although it's a little longer, we liked the sound of it. So yeah, I just ran with it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting name because, like, even when I heard the name, I'm like, okay, this seems interesting. And I also saw a few videos, like, you guys did some drone survey or something. And I'm like, okay, someone is using some tech in Nepal, and that's really awesome. So, you are professionally active in both Nepal and in the US. So, what do you find is the major architectural difference in terms of practice while practicing in Nepal and in the US?
The major difference would be the level of detail that goes into a design process. I started my work experience in US, and I had to immediately dive into like a lot of detailing, a lot of BIM modeling. But here in US, but here in Nepal, I realize there's not much of that. Um, uh, the usual practice would be just starting off with some schematic design, uh, you know, uh, explaining the clients what the vision is, and just diving straight off of that to a little bit of design development uh, for the AIJ process here in Nepal, and then
So one thing,
immediately.
one thing. I
I'm
want to
sorry.
cut it off because you said AHJ. Maybe viewers they won't know what's the full form. So if you want to expand
Oh,
on
sorry
that,
about that.
yeah.
So the authority having jurisdiction here in Nepal would be, what we call the Naksapas. So the requirements for that is very minimal. So all the drawings necessary for that process is uh, compared to US, it's very minimal. So usually, what the process is in Nepal is um, what I've seen is you start off with schematic design, and then do some like design development, and then come up with all the elevations, floor plans, just the basic ones, and just submit it to your local government, and then they give you a permission to start the construction process, and then you immediately dive into construction administration part. So you're skipping a whole phase of a design, which is kind of a little bit troubling, because a lot of finishes, a lot of detailing is just skipped in this process. And also, it's also because the client does not understand the construction documents part of the design here in Nepal. So they prefer not to, spend a lot of like energy or time, or um, their hard-earned money on construction documents, because it's more technical, and they don't understand it. And we had to educate them a lot. And the reason we started Studio 2.0 was because of specifically because of that, because we wanted to focus more on the BIM side of things, so that we could execute a design very efficiently. Um, but we also realized that there was not much, um, you know, on the contractor's end. We realized there was not much, skilled, like technically skilled people who could understand all the technical aspects of a construction documents. So that was a challenge here in Nepal too, which is not in US, because most of all the general contractors already are familiar with the construction documents that we as architects produce.
Yeah, I think not just contractors, might be lots of consultants. They might be still based in AutoCAD,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Because if an architect is only using BIM, then that's like just the half side of the work. Because you need other people to collaborate on that as well, and then you can produce the whole model with all the building informations on it. So, what do you think is the most challenging to improve in architecture practice in Nepal?
Um, hmm. I think the most challenging part is, um, first of all, convincing clients to hire engineers, like consultants, because
Hmm.
here in Nepal, like even if you get hired as an architect, you are expected to come up with all the plumbing, all the electrical um, uh, drawings yourself, which is not a very I mean, we do know the basics of plumbing and electrical, but there's it's not a default practice that a client is willing to hire um, electrical engineers, plumbing engineers, mechanical engineers for a project. But I think it's slowly changing for big projects. But I'd like to see that in small projects as well, because small projects also deserve that kind of attention. Um, so yeah, that's one of the major challenge would be convincing the client to spend more on design rather than materials at the end of the process, because what I've seen is you don't want to spend um, you know more to save less, so um, so yeah, I would say I would refer clients um, spending a lot of their energy on design rather than construction materials. So that way, a lot of things could be efficiently sorted out before even the construction starts. And um, the regular practice is a lot of troubleshooting is done during the construction process. Um, but I think we should be more focused on, um, you know, forecasting all the problems that could be, that could show up in our construction, and then just like troubleshooting it before just construction starts. So that would save a lot of clients money and we as designers energy during construction.
Hmm. So, you said that like client, they don't want to spend much time on construction documentation and all. And is it just in the smaller projects or is it in the bigger projects as well? Because my experience in Nepal, it I just worked for like 1.5 year, very limited. So I just wanted to know it from you.
Um, like big projects are more complicated, so the clients has to
Hmm.
rely on those complexities. But even for, I mean, a mid-rise building, right? So if the
Hmm.
it's like what 4 or 5 story high building, the complexity is pretty great. I mean, if you're talking about like incorporating plumbing system into a building and synchronizing that with like electrical drawings, uh, you know, uh, uh, structural drawings. Um, I've seen, and it's also coordinating different materials within the subcontractors. So if a building, I've seen a building, um, which use both metal and wood, and then it's because of the coordination issue they couldn't figure out like a small detail, and it looks out of place. So things like that could be well coordinated using BIM and other other softwares that's very easily available and easily um, well communicated before even the construction starts. But not using those tools limit the possibility of design, and also um, uh, and also is not helping with the finishing, coming up with a good quality finishing. at the end of the construction process.
Okay. So I think like we talked about the challenges, and also I wanted to touch upon like the challenges of incorporating BIM technology in Nepal, because like to have the BIM technology we kind of need to subscribe for Revit, and it's kind of expensive software. So do you see like any architecture firm like doing that, or how is the situation right now?
Not much, but I think it's slowly changing because um, architecture in Nepal also have realized the potential of using BIM softwares. It's easy to coordinate. There are a few challenges, like you mentioned. There's a cost involved, and it's very hard to maintain that recurring expense for an architecture firm, and also to consultants,
Mhm.
because it's even if the architect decides to use a Revit or whatever, and then if the consultants are stuck with the old-fashioned like 2D drawings, we have to hire an in-house a person to just convert all the CAD drawings into Revit and incorporate it into our BIM model. But I think um, it as the complexity of the project grows, I think BIM is more well accepted, and we have also seen students, like fresh graduates, really interested in BIM, like compared to like a couple of years ago. So we have seen a lot of like students or fresh graduates having some experience with BIM tools like Revit, than a few years ago.
Mhm. So even talking about BIM, I'm also doing a lot of BIM stuff nowadays. So I'm also getting lots of informations on that, and now I can see like why we have to use BIM, because like if there is no one to educate about it, then like you won't even know. But at the same time, I also wanted to ask, like, are you guys using BIM in your office in Nepal, like
Yes,
Revit or? Okay.
yes, we try to, because like um, if it actually depends on the client as well. Some clients does not uh, our strategy has changed. In the past, we used to use BIM models for like all the projects, but what we realized is like the clients, do not care what tool we used. They just care about like the design decisions that needs to be you know uh, executed, or planned. So it depends on what kind of project we are working with. If we are working with a very small project, like a small interior of a retail store, we would just do it like using SketchUp. But for big projects like multi-story buildings, we usually go with Revit or some other BIM software, and also give them, because um, it if you use a BIM model, it takes a lot of time documenting all your design decisions into a model. But if you use any other software that's for a simple project, it might not be necessary for the client. So yeah, it depends on the project.
Okay. Yeah, because BIM is very front loaded, because like you have to do a lot of groundwork before starting a project. Like you need to
Hmm.
define what kind of wall is it, and then like so many other things that you got to do. And if consultants are using model, then you got to link all of them. So kind of like I was just trying to understand that, like how it's going on in your office. So, and we talked about challenges. What do you think about the opportunity? So like what opportunities do you see in Nepal which is not in the US, or maybe like just an opportunity in Nepal?
I would say there's not a much of incorporation of technologies into design processes, because we realize like a simple drone shot of a site is very helpful for a client to visualize, um, like how we see a site, because we usually see the site as from a bird's eye perspective, right? And the client, the client just see lines in a site plan, and they're not very familiar with the technicalities of a drawing. So just giving them the same view as we see it, and on top of that, if we do a US project, we do have a very high quality Google Earth image of a site, but we don't have that in Nepal. So a simple drone shot, just like 5 minutes of flying around on top of a site, would give a client a good perspective of what their site looks like and what their site limitations are. So things like that, and also just using a VR headset in a client presentation just completely changes perspective of what the project could be, what the interior of a project would look like when it's constructed. So small things like that really helps communicate a lot of things with the clients. And I think what we realized is a lot of since architecture is a very technical field, and we have a vision of our own, and we do have everything inside our minds when we design things, and we do know it works, but a major challenge is how do we communicate that to a client who are very who are non-technical, and who don't understand all the technicalities of a project which has not even been built, right? And at the end, the client is the one who's paying for all the design and all the construction part, so they have the right to know what's going on. And since we're collaborating with the clients, they have the right to know what's going on with their project.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I can see we can incorporate a lot of technology there. So, talking about technology, because that's kind of like the added service. Because I'm studying ARE, so I'm just trying to like get into that thing as well. So, for the viewers who don't know ARE, it's an architecture licensing exam in the US. So you have to take that exam, and then only you can call yourself an architect. And I think recently in Nepal as well, they have introduced this exam to call yourself an architect, right?
Yes.
I, I, okay, yeah, I just saw somewhere. I was not really sure about that, but yeah. Anyways, coming back to what I was saying, so like incorporating these technology, this is also kind of like it's like the added service for the architect. And so what I'm trying to get into is like what's the contract structure in Nepal, because like here AIA has their own contract structure. Like they have the basics of how you are contracting with client, and then like with consultant. But is there any like a structure for that in Nepal, or like how you guys are taking account of that?
Uh, Unfortunately, we don't have anything like a
Mm-hmm.
standard set like AIA does,
Mm-hmm.
but we do reference a lot of our contracts, our custom contracts, referring to AIA. So AIA has done a pretty good job at coming up with all the contracts, like uh, the elements in the contracts, listing out all the elements in the contract. We do use that in Nepal, but um, from our experience, a contract is just something it's not a mandatory process, and the clients are not expected to sign a contract before a project starts, which is very different from in what's happening, what usually does in the US. But Um, Here, it's mostly um, you get clients through networks,
Mhm.
your personal network, and then they kind of like trust you to execute the process. So basically, I would say, um, I mean, we do have contracts and we do go through all the contracts and details of the contracts, but the clients usually don't refer to those contracts during the design
Mhm.
process.
Yeah, because I was kind of interested in knowing about it because, like, I even when I was working in Nepal, so I was doing like few freelancing projects, and the one of the challenges in Nepal is like it's so hard to get money from client for the young designers or young freelancers because I don't know, it's just like maybe the culture of what it is. So also like my another question on top of this is like how is the payment structure working in your firm specifically, because like here there is like an invoicing system, right? Like they
Hmm.
have it for they have the timesheet for 15 days and then like they submit it to the client and then you gotta pay kind of stuff like that. But
Hmm.
is it like that in your firm, or how do you guys work do that?
Um, I guess I would say it depends on the client we're working with. Some
Hmm.
clients have we have clients just that paid the entire amount just before even the drawing started, um, like the full amount. It's not just like advance, but um, it's just um, we just because the payment process is really important for the design process too, because we don't want to be, holding off of uh, the design drawings or whatever, and add to the complexities of a project. So we kind of try to resolve the payment issue before we start, by talking to the client. But I think uh, the most efficient way to do it is just like get paid half before and then get paid the half of it later. But it depends on the project too. If the project is big, we understand that there's a lot of like cost involved, a design cost involved. So we do try to work with our clients. But like you said, it's not easy. Getting your invoices cleared here in
Hmm.
Nepal, and it's kind of frustrating because we don't want to be spending our bandwidth on recouping all the invoices, the unpaid invoices. We would rather
Hmm.
prefer to focus on design and coming up with like great design, but we do have to like you know uh, spend a lot of our energy there too,
Hmm.
unfortunately.
So I think most of the people want to know about like how payment structure work in the US. So could you like expand a little bit on that? Like the
Um,
one that I said earlier about like the timesheet and stuff, if you want to expand a little bit on that.
I, to be honest, I don't have much experience on that part.
Okay.
But I would say like holistically, um, we get paid for the time that we spend on a project in US, but it's a little different in Nepal. So, because I mean everything is hourly, right, in US, but it's not so much here in Nepal. So that's I think uh, that adds that adds more complexity to how do we invoice the client here in Nepal. But yeah, it all comes down to like timesheets, uh, billing the clients, how much time we have spent as a team, as a design team, and then invoicing that to the client during different stages of design, and then just collecting the unpaid invoices.
Hmm. So since we are talking so much about the ARE and the professional practice in the US, I wanted to ask one question. So I think this is the question for most of the international student. Like all of them, they're just thinking like, should they take ARE or not? Because most of us will have some kind of visa issues when we are like right after the school practicing. So what do you suggest? Like, what do you think about that?
I did struggle with that question a lot when I was trying to take architecture AREs. But what I realized is after going through all the rigorous process of getting licensed, doing all the diligent work of going through all the resources that Ancarb has, it kind of like gives you a holistic view of what architecture practice is. So to start, I mean, like couple of years back, while I was struggling, because taking AREs is a huge investment, like not just monetary wise, even like you have to spend a lot of your time and energy, and it's a very grueling process. And before you dive into that, you kind of like question yourself, like, is it worth it, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, to be honest, like uh, uh, I actually even like read books, to see if it was even worth it before I dove into it, right? Although the book didn't help, it was very. But what I realized is, eventually, what I realized is, to uh, to excel your career, at one point you have to get licensed, because in the process you'll know a lot of things that you didn't in your architecture school, or even in your while you're at work, right? So even though I had like couple of like a lot of years of experience, when I took my AREs, I had like what 8-9 years of experience under my belt. There were still things that I didn't know, that I learned from while studying AREs. It's kind of like a crash course to elevate your career. And I like looking back, I couldn't have started it earlier, because it's kind of there's a reason why it's very grueling, and it's very it's it takes a lot of your energy, but I think it's looking back, it was worth it. But and the the sooner you finish it, the sooner you get you get like you get chances to get promotions or whatever you're looking for, or start your own company, and your clients, they'll treat you with respect, and you'll get respect from your colleagues, that too. So it increases your credibility, which is very very useful in our field.
Mhm. Yeah, because like it's kind of hard when you are thinking about your immigration status, and at the same time like, oh, is it really worth it? Because like that's a huge amount of hours that you have to spend on that.
Mm-hmm.
So talking about ARE, so could you tell a little bit into detail of your licensing experience? Because I know like you are very much active in LinkedIn talking about like your experience, and so if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, sure. Um, so I had been thinking about like taking AREs for a long time, um, but um, but when COVID hit, um, I was not in US. I was like, I think I was in Delhi, and then I realized that I had more time in my hands. Like the workload was not as busy as it was, and fortunately during that time, NCARB went remote, so we could just take AREs remotely from anywhere So then I decided that this was time for me to just like dive into it because I had more time than I usually had. So and when I started, it was just like, I'll be I read online, and there were like a couple of forums that said like, you see those threads that starts with, I finished my AREs in like 2 months and 3 months, and like I thought like, I mean, if they did it, like I could do it too. So and just wanted to like, get it over with, because I've been thinking about AREs for such a long time, that I just wanted to get it over with. But I did not like pass. I was not expecting to pass all my exams in one shot. I actually went the Amber Book route, which helped me start. But like I tried to finish it in like 2 months. I prepared for 2 months, and then I gave all my 6 exams within 2 weeks, and failed miserably for like 5 of them. So what I realized after failing 5 of them is I did not know how to study for AREs. So I had to relearn learning for AREs. And I looked into other practices, like, like how doctors pass their licensing exams and how they study for it. So what I realized is, although you have to know the content of the AREs, you should also be, learning through active recall. And I am a person, I knew that I was a person who learned from like, practicing rather than like, like reading or taking information passively. I kind of like took a lot of like practice tests. I made a lot of like notes for myself while, while reading books and while going through resources, and did a lot of like custom flashcards. So after doing that, and after preparing for 2 more months, I passed like 4 out of 5, and then which like reinforced my enthusiasm and like my drive for just passing the exam. So after preparing, and I had to take a break for a month due to like personal projects, but like after a month of break, I just prepared for another 4 weeks and passed like the final exam. So I would say the most helpful thing during my exam, like preparation for exams, was focusing more on the active learning side of things, of learning, and being just persistent. Just not. I mean, it's not easy to be persistent if you like fail like 5 of the 6 exams, but I rather saw it as a challenge than just being set back, and I focused more on like at least I passed one exam so that I don't have to do the same exam again. So I rather focused more on getting exams, like passing the past exams, rather than just focusing on the failed exams, and took it as a challenge to just go through that preparation for the next round.
Mm-hmm. So when you said active learning, could you define what that means?
So the way I prepared was, I started with the passive learning method, which is more like taking in, like absorbing the information, the content, like reading books, like listening to lectures, and the active learning would be more of an interactive learning, like discussing discussing a question in a public forum or with a colleague, or taking practice tests where you kind of like have to recall the information that you studied. So one way to put it is, um, one analogy I like is, it's kind of like, passive learning is like hoarding a book, and all the information of a book, and you have to organize those books in your like mental library somewhere, and you have to be able to retrieve those books when you need them, right? So if you're not able to do that, what's the point? So um, so if you like if you consistently um, recall the information that you have learned, it kind of like, it kind of helps you, uh, reinforce what actually happens in an ARE exams, because they ask you certain things and you have to recall those information that you learned during your preparation. So active learning is basically um, uh, going back and forth, like learning things and also recalling the information that you have learned during your preparation.
Mhm. So I was just wondering, do you know anything about the licensing exam in Nepal? Because I was just thinking, like, what's the model in Nepal? Because do they have like multiple exams like here, or is it just a one exam?
I frankly, I do not have that idea, because
Okay.
I've been, I've not had a, I've never I've never gone to university here in Nepal, so
Yeah.
honestly, I can't tell.
Okay. Yeah, just a random question popped in my head when we were talking. So, um, what kind of change you felt as a professional after taking ERE? Because like there must be some shift in terms of your horizon of thinking, or like how did it make a difference in your role working as an architect?
Um, One major change was, during AREs, I had accumulated a lot of resources, um, like my personal notes, a lot of books that I referred to. Like for example, I referred to American Graphic Standards a lot during my ARE exams, and the way ARE is set up is it also teaches you how to like use those resources, right? So one quick example is like in during case studies, you have to go through a lot of PDFs and a lot of information, in like in a short period of time, uh, and you use tools like search and all, that helped, um, after I passed those exams too. So I think one major thing that helped me was I still use those resources that I collected during my AREs, right now. So, because I mean, it's kind of like, you've already done all the due diligence of like collecting all the documents, all the resources for yourself. So if I have to do some like code related stuff, I already have a book that I refer to, or the book that I used during my AREs, and the resource that I used. So there are a lot of tools that you will use during your ARE, and it doesn't have to be the same, but you'll still use that, well, when you're already licensed, and it saves a lot of your time, during work, too.
Okay. So, could you tell a little bit about your position right now in the firm you're working, and what's your role? So,
Yes.
because I saw you, you are more into a project management side now. So I just wanted to know about like what's the difference of being a project manager and the architect, which is basically like what people mostly have in their mind is like designing and all. So just wanted to know more on that.
So I started my career with more like on the technical side, and I think most architects do. So eventually, so as my career progressed, I um, I realized that the communication that happens, the coordination that happens, is also important, as important as design, uh, uh, drawings, and all the technical stuff that we do. So I eventually, you know, I eventually realized that to be a good architect, you also need to communicate your design, communicate your, um, you know, um coordinate with consultants, coordinate with clients, and keeping track of all the design deliverables, the timelines that's associated with the project, and that it's a lot of work too, and you can't do it on a big project and a big complex project. It's very hard for you to just do all that and also design. So I kind of, uh, you know, uh, I was kind of uh, more like was inclined to that part of architecture as well, and was more interested because personally, I also like managing a project and keeping it on track while the project is going on. So after I was exposed to that, I was more driven, on the project management side as well. And what I realized was being a senior architect and being a project manager is kind of like um, it's kind of on the same level, but you're doing like two different aspects of a project. So one is more organizing, coordinating, keeping things on track, and the other is just executing the design, uh, design like ideas or design decisions, or documenting them in your construction documents. So although it's a little different, it's important to keep track of all the things that happens during a design. So yeah, I've been involved in both right now, but I think as things change, I would probably be more focusing on the project management side.
So when you are doing a project management, like what are the actual scope that mostly you have to keep in the mind? Because I'm just asking from the perspective of a young architect, because they might not even know like what a project management looks like. So you mentioned about the coordinating with consultants and stuff like that. So I just wanted to know a little bit more detail on that, if you want to
Sure.
expand.
So the way I see it is project management is you'll be looking at a holistic. You'll be looking at the project more holistically rather than just diving into details. Rather than the way the term I use is, we're more focused on the bird's eye view rather than the frog's eye view. So you have to keep track of things like, most of the projects are time sensitive, right? So you create like strategies to make sure all your team members are on track and hit the deadline that we're supposed to hit. And also, there's like a lot of like costs involved, and clients are very sensitive about like time and cost, and we do have to do that like consistently and periodically to make sure that we have a quality design, and finishing it on time and within the budget. So we want to be really mindful of the cost and time without compromising the quality. I think that's the holistically
Hmm.
the job of a project manager.
Exactly. So basically, not diving more into like the design aspect, but just keeping those things, like keeping those things on check, like communicating with the person who is actually designing, by like talking with clients and stuff like that. Okay.
Mhm.
And so I also saw that you took this one certification recently, called PMP. So what is that exactly?
So so yeah, that's when I was starting to get into project management, and a project management certification, PMP certification, is a certification for project management, not just architecture. I don't think architects are required to have uh, that certification, but if you want to manage a project, even outside of architecture, um, that was what I wanted to know more about. Um, so what I learned from that uh, process, what I learned from that certification, is um, uh, the project management system, the project management um, that we follow in architecture is called a traditional project management, and there's a more agile project management that happens for managing a project like a software project, right? Because in a traditional project management, what happens is the end goal, and you plan for that. But sometimes what happens is like there are a couple of like there are like other projects like software projects which you don't know the outcome, right? Because you have to be more involved with the user, and you have to be like have like instead of having a long-term goal, you have like short-term goals, and you get feedback, and then you just like revise your plan. So I learned a lot of that during the PMP certification, and I mean, and that could also be implemented to architecture projects. But I realized that there was more strategies to just like traditional project management.
Hmm. So yeah, we talked so much about architecture and then architecture in Nepal and stuff like that. So okay, I wanted to ask, like, what do you do for fun? Just jumping a little bit into different topic, because like most of the architects, like why I'm asking this question is like sometimes they just think about architecture all the time. So I just wanted to know, like, what do you do for fun?
I like going to museums. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, whenever I get a chance, I go to museums. I know it's a little related to architecture. I am kind of like an architecture nerd when going through these museums. I do, I'm aware of the spaces that they create, but the artwork, I really enjoy, just immersing myself into them, because I think it kind of like it kind of is a forefront of uh, our society, and like the thought process that goes into a certain artwork. So I try to plan an art trip every once in a while when I get the chance.
Okay. Do you have like any favorite artwork from favorite artist or something?
Um, yes, I think um, um, there's one artist, um, uh, Donald Judd, who does like amazing industrial art, um, uh, and he actually has designed some like buildings as well, but he is more like a sculptural artist. So I love the way he details all his sculptures. But yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, he is one of my favorites.
Okay. Now, I mean, I can see when you said detail for the sculpture, and I'm like, okay, you already mentioned previously, like you are more inclined into architecture detailing as well. So I can see some parallels there as well. And so yeah, I also realized like most of the architects, they kind of need to understand about the art. I mean, not understand, at least like have some sense, because back then when I was like studying in Nepal, and I was not much into art, and then there was this one studio and where we had to reference like so many art pieces from the other artist, and it felt like we were using reference from artists, and that's how it opened like a different dimension of thinking the concept, rather than like when we are doing research, like mostly we just follow star architects. We'll be like, okay, BRK angles, we need like this form going here, here, and then like cutting off. But I feel like concept development is it's a really important thing, that you can have like a different ways of doing it. And I feel like art is one of the thing that you can really get inspired from. So like, do you ever think it that way? Like, have you ever think it in terms of your projects?
Yes, yes. There's a genre of art which is called conceptual art, which is very focused on, not the implementation of the art, but like the process of coming up with the idea. So one of my one of my other favorite artists is Saul Levitt, who has worked with IMP for as a draftsperson, and eventually he became an artist, and he does like amazing line works, and he is a conceptual artist, so the way that relates to architecture is we forget that we mostly focus on the conceptual part of the construction, whole construction, and we have to be wary about, like we are actually creating like the instruction to build a design or build a building. We are not like, we are not there in the field, like, building the building. We are actually coming up with the instruction to build a building, right? And we do, the way I relate to that conceptual art and our field is more like we are, we are more of a we are designing a concept of a building. We're not actually building a building, right? And that's important too. You have to have a great idea. You have to have a great vision to start a project, and which is very important in any architectural project. So I kind of relate that with the art that I'm enjoying, I guess. But yeah, I do see ourselves as kind of like a conceptual artist in a way.
Hmm. So, like, we talked about so many things today. I just wanted to like sum up this whole conversation with like few advice that you want to give it to like young designer or architect who are um, thinking about pursuing ARE. That would be the first question, and another would be like someone who wants to come to the US,
Hmm.
and that would be the second question. So, if there is any advice from your side.
Sure, sure. So, um, as for taking AREs, I would suggest anyone to do it as soon as possible, because it helps. It helps with your career, and it helps you be a better architect as well. So I would encourage everyone who is thinking about like taking AREs to just jump in. You don't have to pass all the exams in a single pass. Some people do, which is great, but it's not for all of us. So I would suggest you to do it like as soon as possible, and and you'll realize after you're done with that is you'll be able to uh, you'll be able to perform better than what you were used to. So I would really encourage anyone who's been thinking about taking AREs. And the second part you said, if you're thinking about like uh, uh, studying in US from Nepal or anywhere else, I would, I would suggest you do research on what program you want to join. And one mistake I did was I didn't know much about NAB accreditation. So
Mm.
um, when I first joined when I first joined architecture school, I I didn't realize that there was a program that had NAB accreditation, which would which would help you get licensed, right? So after during my bachelor, while I was taking my Bachelor of Science in Architectural Studies, I realized that this was not. I wanted to get licensed, and this was not enough. So I had to um, come back to the school again, take my master's in architecture, which was a NAB accredited degree, and then eventually get licensed. So
Mm.
that would be the most important thing I would suggest people look into.
Yeah. Yep. I can see that because I have talked with so many people, and then they're like, oh, yeah, we totally forgot about those things. And thank you so much for your time. I hope you had a great time with the conversation. And I personally enjoyed, and also it was kind of like a mentorship for me as well, because like all the questions was not just from the international student perspective, it was my own questions as well, because I was also very much confused with that. So yeah, it was a fun episode, and we're gonna end it here today. So all right, I will see you guys in the next episode with new guest. And until then, thank you for watching. All right, bye bye.